So I got kind of a late start today. I kind of got home and did. I actually had a nap because it was such a. It's a long day after having Veterans Day off, which I know a lot of you guys don't get, but for some reason I did. But in any case, we're going to talk today about the issue of Nancy Pelosi. She is. She doesn't. She. I don't think that she really appreciates that she's won herself 2 years in hell by winning the House of Representatives in last week's midterms, because the reality is, yes, the Democratic Party as an organization will have a majority and they'll be able to choose a speaker, but the Democratic Party as a congressional caucus isn't really united. They don't even know, they don't even have their own identity as a party. It's much worse. People like to talk about how the Republican Party is divided between never Trump people and then the hardcore MAGAs, and then there's the Freedom Caucus, and then there's some of these what do you call them, like Christian conservatives, and yeah, there's a division there. I don't think it's a division that leads to real gridlock within the party, though, because eventually, I think there's problems there, but it's not as bad as what we're about to talk about. You see, for the Democratic Party, it's a long tightrope. It's a very very long tightrope between their wings, their progressive wing, and then the wing that actually controls the policy in the party, which is the corporate wing. And the problem that the corporate wing is going to have now is that the progressive wing has elected a number of nominal representatives to Congress. Now, they've always had a few people that are like a little further to the left than the other ones. Barbara Lee, for example, is a former Black Panther, as is Bobby Rush, by the way. But Barbara Lee and Bobby Rush are they take certain positions that are radical as far as opposing the war in Afghanistan, for example. I believe Barbara Lee opposed it. Certain things are consistent about, but by and large, in terms of policies regarding corporations and the economy and stuff like that, they don't really. First of all, they don't have much of an effect, and they're mostly symbolic, and they don't really attract much media attention. Whereas the new crop, these people like Ilhan Omar, who is the new representative from Minnesota replacing Keith Ellison, you're going to see a lot more attention because they're younger, they're hipper, and there's simply more scrutiny on them because they stand out more. So they're an eyesore for the corporate Democrats. Why would I say that? Okay, I'm not saying that these people can't have their own position, even though these are positions I don't really agree with at all. But I am saying that when you have a party that raises money, the Democratic Party raises money from all sorts of these really dirty corporate donors, such as financial houses, Goldman Sachs, for example, or oil companies. They raise money from insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, all sorts of dirty lobbyists, just like in the past, just like the Republican Party. I think it's a problem for both of them. I think that you do need Citizens United in a certain way. I disagree with the decision. The decision does make some sense, but it's really shown since then how corrupt both of the parties can be. Because just because you can, just because you can collect money from these corporations, raise money from them, doesn't mean that it's a good idea. It doesn't mean that it makes good politics. Doesn't make Well, it makes good politics. It doesn't make good policy. So it says here Tuesday marked the start of freshman orientation in Washington, D.C., where new members of Congress arrived to meet their colleagues and learn how the House and Senate actually work. Representative elect Ilhan Omar, a Democrat from Minneapolis and one of the first Muslim women elected to Congress, quickly met up with some of her fellow trailblazing colleagues like Rashida Tlaib and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So you see, they didn't mention Ayanna Pressley. Isn't that discriminatory? But this is Ayanna Pressley here from Boston, who, by the way, I think she's probably going to be the most successful of them all because I think she has a good knack for I think she has the best political mind. I don't think she really has any ideas, but I think that she knows how to get along in Washington. That's what I'm trying to say. I think she was an aide to, it might have been Joe Biden, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember who it was. Hmm. Yeah, Ayanna Pressley. People think that they elected this new major progressive figure from Massachusetts. She's going to be of the corporate Dems. She's going to be as corporate as it gets when it's all said and done. You mark my words. And in fact, if you look at these four and the districts that they came from, the progressives have gained literally nothing because they're coming in place of people that they'd already been on the far left, and I'll explain why. Okay, you have, who do we start with? Ocasio-Cortez replaced Joe Crowley. Now, Joe Crowley was, yes, he took corporate money, but a lot of his positions, especially on immigration, are far to the left. You know, almost an open borders guy. So she replaced basically a corporate progressive, and eventually she might become one because eventually people are just going to forget. Once she's in office, once she becomes basically established in that office, and people look to her for guidance, she'll be able to do whatever the hell she wants because her followers will end up creating kind of a cult of personality around her. It's the same type of thing that develops around celebrities like Jay-Z, or you know it's just fan culture. It has nothing to do with her actual ideas, which by the way, she doesn't even have any real ideas of her own. She's basically borrowing ideas from the Democratic Socialists of America and other progressive groups that basically she's a mouthpiece for. Who's the next person? Rashida Tlaib. So she replaced John Conyers. John Conyers was one of the most left-wing members of Congress for decades. John Conyers would repeatedly over the years introduce uh, bills in order to try to get reparations. There were a number of, I don't remember whether the other, he had a number of other issues where he was further to the left, much further to the left than the Democrats. Of course, he got forced to resign. He was forced to resign because of serial sexual harassment claims against him from literally every, like, apparently you couldn't get into an elevator with him without getting groped or something if you were a woman, or I mean, the guy was just a sex machine, I guess. Then, of course, there's Presley, who replaced, I think, a guy named Capuano in Boston. So basically, their politics were the same. It's just he happened to be a white Italian guy, and she happens to be a black woman. And she's actually, I've seen her speak on video. She's very good. She's very professional, very good at communicating with people. I think that that's an advantage you need. I don't see much difference between her and the other guy. Okay, so I think that really her presentation and her ability to really appeal to people were what won the day. But in reality, you're not going to see a policy difference. You're not going to see a real tangible advancement of progressivism in in her getting elected. And by the way, this isn't me talking, and this has nothing to do. I mean, I think she's probably going to be in Congress for a while. Jimmy Dore actually made the same point that she and Jimmy Dore is a progressive. I'm not. Jimmy Dore was saying, pay attention, that all of the people who were elected that were progressives were replacing other progressives. Okay, so essentially the progressive movement has literally gained nothing in this election in terms of the House of Representatives. They've basically just elected. I think maybe he said that some people in Pennsylvania that were elected were uh, pretty far to the left, but I haven't really researched that. So he might be right. I'm not sure. Then the person to the furthest left is Ilhan Omar, who is, of course, replacing Keith Ellison, who was one of the main congressional supporters for Bernie Sanders in 2016. So, yeah, these are people who they're replacing other progressives. So the issue in this in this one is that Ilhan Omar apparently she during the election. I've talked to you guys before about Jewish liberals. And a lot of these Jewish liberals, they will hold their nose during the election and claim, well, this politician will moderate when he gets into office, especially concerning policies on Israel, because they say, well, the Democratic Party as a whole is still largely pro-Israel because they support foreign aid to Israel, that's a policy. I oppose all foreign aid to any country. I think it actually ties countries down and doesn't allow them to have their own foreign policy. And we would have better relations with a number of these countries and their populations if we didn't give them foreign aid that compromises their leaders. It's the same type of carrot and stick strategy we've employed against Latin America. And look at where they are today in terms of the Middle East. I don't believe in foreign aid, not to the Palestinians, not to the Israelis, not even to Egypt, which I think is an important ally, not to Saudi Arabia, none of them. So a lot of these Jewish liberal people, especially like the clergy and whatever, the Reform Jews especially, they will basically say, well, we want to be able to support somebody who has a comprehensive, progressive social policy. You know, there a lot of these people in those denominations, the Reform denomination of Judaism and the quote unquote conservative denomination in Judaism, they're more concerned with immigrant rights, freedom of choice. Um, they're very pro-choice. Other women's rights issues. You could look at some of their views on gun rights. They're very very anti-gun. Those positions have nothing to do with Jewish scripture and beliefs. Nothing. They try to shoehorn it into the Tikkun Olam category, and it just doesn't make any sense. But they still do it because it empowers them to believe that their quote unquote social mission, their Tikkun Olam actually literally means repairing the world. It makes them look, because they've basically removed any sort of theology from their own belief system, any belief in any sort of God. They can't have an honest conversation about what the universe is about and what spirituality is and where scripture fits into that, whether in a positive way or a negative way. I think in many ways open atheists, people who are hardcore atheists like Sam Harris, who I disagree with. I'm not an atheist by any stretch of the imagination. I think Sam Harris is much more honest than these progressive denominations, because he at least tries to rationalize his disbelief in God, and they don't. They try to make it seem like they're adapting tradition to modernity, and basically everything that was written in Scripture was a bunch of just oral what do you call them? Just verbal history that people pass down between each other, and it's an embellishment, and it's almost like thinking about religion as a folk tale, which I personally disagree with a lot. I think that they have the right to preach it. I think it's a bunch of nonsense, though. I'm not going to pretend to respect it. Okay, I have to respect their right to preach it. I don't have to respect the idea itself, because it isn't an honest viewpoint of any sort of religion or spirituality. But that's not that's not necessarily the theme here. The theme here is that back at home, many of her Jewish so I'm reading here. Many of her Jewish constituents were grappling with remarks her office made on Sunday to a website called Muslim Girl, claiming that Omar supported the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel. This seemed like a bait and switch to many Jewish Minnesotans. Minnesota, when she was asked at an August primary debate held in a synagogue to specify exactly where you stand on BDS, Omar said that BDS was, quote, not helpful in getting that two-state solution, never explaining that she in fact supported the policy. So this person, this rabbi at Bethel Synagogue, which is probably Reform, Avi Olitsky, says she's either misrepresenting or misunderstanding, and I hope to be able to have a dialogue with her that clarifies which of those is the nature of her stance. So I think that this guy has basically, he can't admit that he was had, that he was taken for a ride. And next time when she's up for re-election, he's going to have to endorse her again. But by the way, she's probably not going to have an opponent in that race. I think in this race she had like a guy come in second with like 20% or something. However, he added, just as I have with all of our previous elected officials, I hope to be able to continue a dialogue once Congresswoman-elect Omar is in office. However, this starts her tenure off on the wrong foot. Omar's office did not respond to an interview request. It's unclear why Omar and her team decided to come forward about BDS stance now after the election, but before she is sworn in and can vote on the issue. Well, it's pretty simple because they're laughing at you to your faces. They played coy the entire election cycle, pretended that they have a less decided decision than they do, and now they're coming forward and saying what they really thought. Okay, and you were dumb enough to play coy and say, well, we're not sure what they're going to do. Maybe they'll surprise us and say something. No, you should vote for a person based on what you know about them. And these people, Taliban, Ocasio-Cortez, and Omar, I think they should be able to vote however they want on the issue. If they want to vote for BDS and support it, which I don't at all, but if they want to, they have the perfect right to do it. But for these people were basically asking them to lie. They were telling them, "Kill me softly with your song." I don't remember which that wasn't the song I was thinking of, but they were basically telling them there's a song by Fleetwood Mac, that's the one called "Little Lies," where you just you tell somebody to tell you little lies, and that's exactly what they did. So they got what they wanted. They were lied to, and now they're reaping the consequences of it. Taliban and Ocasio-Cortez, who were both criticized for their statements on Israel during their campaigns, do not appear to have said anything on the subject since their general election victories last week. Omar, a former Somali refugee who became a community activist and then a member of the state house, appears to be the first member or future member of Congress to publicly support the BDS movement. She cruised the general election victory in November in a district, Minnesota's fifth, that hasn't voted for a Republican since 1962. I think there's one in Minnesota that's even longer. It hasn't. By the way, I don't think that's true because I believe Betty McCollum, who is also, she's been in Congress for several years, I think since the 2000s. She also, I believe, is a supporter of BDS. So that's actually they're not doing their research. The forward. The district encompasses Minneapolis and some of its suburbs, including St. Louis Park, which has a large Jewish population. The seat opened up when 12-year incumbent Representative Keith Ellison, who had faced criticism from some Jewish groups for his pro-Palestinian votes and past times with Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, but had a good working relationship with local Jewish institutions, announced he was running for state attorney general, which he was also elected to last week. Omar, currently in her first term in the state house, was seen as one of the frontrunners in the district primary of the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, but some of the Jewish community were concerned about her past comments about Israel during a 2012 war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Omar tweeted, "Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel." Many saw this as repeating an anti-Semitic tropes about Jews using magic to control world events. When a Twitter user citing her 2012 tweet called her a Jew hater in May 2018 during her primary campaign, she replied, "Drawing attention to the apartheid Israeli regime is far from hating Jews." Omar also voted in 2017 against a bill that would bar the state government from contracting with companies that engage in BDS. It passed with large bipartisan majorities and was signed into law by Democratic Governor Mark Dayton, but was opposed by the ACLU and other organizations on free speech grounds. So this is where I sit. I have consistently said that those bills, the anti-BDS bills, are ridiculous. They don't accomplish anything. They actually help BDS by attracting attention to it and making them appear to be the victim of state discrimination, which in a certain sense they are. I mean, you have to admit they have an opinion. It's an opinion that might be wrong or it might be something that you disagree with, but they have an opinion. As long as they just say, well, we're not going to do business with Israeli companies, I don't think that they're really, that's fine. They're not violently attacking anyone. There are BDS campaigns that go and harass people and vandalize people. So that, I think, is crossing the line. But the actual position of the movement of not doing business with Israeli companies is, that's that's a free speech issue. You can say that, and I don't think that the government should pass laws on this ground. So in that on that issue, I agree with the ACLU. Although the ACLU has itself said that we're not going to defend free speech for bigots anymore. Well, the BDS movement is full of bigots, so I guess they get to pick which bigots now as well. So then they go on and talk about how she said a bunch of things that were here. She says this was a text campaign that she had with a local Jewish newspaper, and says, "My position has always been the same. I believe and support the BDS movement and have fought to make sure people right to support it isn't criminalized. Regarding my vote against the anti-BDS bill, I do, however, have reservations on effectiveness of the movement in accomplishing a lasting solution, which is what I believe I said at the forum." Which I think is it's not it doesn't completely make sense, but I guess what do they want? They weren't going to get somebody who was pro-Israel from her. It's just not true. And this person says, "I think she should have been explicit," said Beth Gendler, the executive director of the National Council of Jewish Women Minnesota, which sponsored the Beth El event. Well, there goes their credibility. There goes this organization, the National Council of Jewish Women. They're just a leftist organization. It should be the National Council of Leftist Jewish Women, because I don't think they represent. They don't represent they'll always create a group that they say it represents women. It represents Mexicans. It represents gay people. It represents, I don't know, Ukrainian midgets or something. And the reality is that people have beliefs based on their personal circumstances. People. I was talking yesterday to somebody, he happens to be a minority, extremely pro-gun rights, but he votes liberal. So what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to browbeat them into submission? No. You have to reason with people, and that's not what these groups do. That's not what these groups like ACLU or BDS or the ADL. They don't do that. They don't debate the actual issues. They put forward their policy agenda, and then when you don't agree with them, they call you a bigot one way or the other. So you have the Muslim group calling the Jewish group bigots, and you have the Jewish group calling the Muslim group bigots, and basically the issue is just smothered. She added that NCJW has worked with Omar in her capacity as a state legislator on progressive policy priorities, and Gendler said they hope to continue to do so. So basically they're saying, well, we know she's lied to us on an issue that's very important to us, but because other issues take precedence over that, other issues that have nothing to do with Judaism, with the Jewish community, such as it is, which I don't even believe in communities anymore. I think it's a bunch of bullshit based on this, based on the way black community leaders sell out their people, based on the way, you have Jorge Ramos pretending to represent all the immigrants in America. Okay, even though, does Jorge Ramos represent Chinese immigrants? No. Does he represent immigrants from, places like Cameroon? No. Jorge Ramos represents Mexican-American identity politics. Okay, and a lot of Mexicans, I believe, probably would say, well, nobody listens to Jorge Ramos among us. We just listen to whoever the hell we want. We're troubled by her support of BDS, and we want to maintain our working relationship with her as a member of Congress. She said, "We need each other." It doesn't sound like you need each other. It sounds like you need her. The Jewish Community Relations Council of Minnesota and the Dakotas sounded a similar theme. The BDS movement seeks to deny the Jewish people our right to self-determination and is indeed counteractive to a goal that both the JCRC and Representative Omar support a two-state solution that recognizes, in Representative Omar's words, Israel's place in the Middle East and the Jewish people's rightful place in the region. The JCRC looks forward to working and building dialogue with Representative-elect Omar on this mutual goal. Executive Director Steve Hunig said in a statement. Of course, not everyone in the community was displeased. So now you're going to get the real freaks. This one says, I was thrilled to hear that Ilhan Omar supports the BDS movement and that she is committed to making sure that people's constitutional right to boycott is protected. Shay Berkowitz, a member of Jewish Voice for Peace and a state party delegate, told the Forward via Facebook. She added that Omar will be a much-needed, bold, and courageous voice in Congress. Bold how? How is she bold? Nobody ever challenges her. She lies to people's faces. And yet people think that this is, it's acceptable because we need her help on other shit that we need. National Jewish political groups also wanted to respond. Representatives of the GAB.AI and the Republican Jewish Coalition, where, full disclosure, I interned for a college semester, both said they were not surprised by the Omar news. We made a statement announcing her position on August, Soifer said. We were very clear about where she stood. But Soifer also argued that Omar, Talib, and Ocasio-Cortez were outside of the mainstream of the party. By the end of this election cycle, we'll have picked up almost 40 seats. We'll have 230. So I think this person interned with the Jewish Democratic Coalition of America. That's the JDCA. I thought they meant the Republican Jewish Coalition. Which, by the way, I don't think that either of those groups really have any effect. I think that they're both jokes. RJC national spokesman Neil Strauss said that was a Pollyanna-ish view, citing many more members of Congress who he said harbored anti-Semitic sentiments. You have Hank Johnson, who calls Israeli termites. You have Andre Carson, who freely associates with Louis Farrakhan. Democrats who associate with the Women's March, Alyssa Milano and Deborah Messing, they're far from right-wing spokespeople. They recognize the Women's March for what it is, but Kirsten Gillibrand doesn't somehow. Cory Booker doesn't somehow. Anyway, fuck the Forward. And I'm not going to belong to any community now. I do belong to a congregation, and I participate in a congregation because it's a religious group of people that we get together and then we worship together. This isn't a bunch of community organizing bullshit. Okay? This is what Nancy Pelosi has inherited, and this is what the next 2 years is going to look like. She is basically going to be hounded by these idiots until 2020, and we'll see what happens then. But I don't think it's going to end up good for her.
I just want to let you all know how proud I am of each and every single one of you for putting yourselves and your bodies and everything on the line to make sure that we save our planet, our generation, and our future. It's so incredibly important. I've shared with you all, and I've shared my story that my journey here started at Standing Rock. And it started with everyday people doing exactly what you all were doing too. You know what? One of the things that I admire so much about Leader Pelosi is that she comes from a space of activism and organizing, and so I think that she really appreciates civic engagement. And really, what I'm here to do is just to support the folks who are here. This is an encouragement of her, and this is to show that we're here.
Yeah, this is truly, this is surreal. I can't believe that it's happened this fast. She is going to make Pelosi's life hell. She's basically, Ocasio-Cortez has been elected as a boil on Nancy Pelosi's ass. And she's saying, well, Nancy Pelosi comes from a lifetime of activism and whatever. No. Nancy Pelosi was the daughter of the mayor of Baltimore. Okay, and now she's been in the Congress for like forever. She gets all of her power from her corporate donors. And Ocasio-Cortez, if she votes to keep Pelosi as the Speaker of the House, you're going to start seeing people on the progressive side start to basically say, well, you're a fake too. So she's going to have to keep doing these stunts and going into her office. Which, by the way, if anybody came to, if I was in a position like this and people came to my office and started occupying my space, I'd basically punch somebody in the face and say, you're trespassing. I don't even care that it's the House of Congress. You're in my fucking, I'm trying to do shit. I'm trying to load the printer here. And you're here talking about whatever. In this case, they were saying, oh, we want a green economy. You want a green economy. I mean, a lot of these people were bussed in from out of town or whatever. They should. But by the way, there's many ways to reduce your environmental use simply by restricting your own personal consumption of water at home, or possibly using public transit, things like that. Recycling. Remember when we talked about recycling? Remember when we talked about no littering and stuff like that? Now it's all about the fucking climate change. That's what it is. So they're alienating more people. You're gonna see Pelosi basically start to have migraine attacks thanks to this idiot Ocasio-Cortez. So at least I guess Ilhan Omar, you could say that she pulled a fast one on her constituents. I mean, I guess good for her. Those people, they deserve what they got. They knew this was coming, and then they let her themselves be lied to when they knew it wasn't the truth. That's about it. Please like the video, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to my other channel, Razor Ray Live Wounds. Comment when the video uploads, and please contribute to the Patreon below if you want to give a tip. Thank you very much, and see you later.